Today we'll be discussing supply in terms of economics. By definition, supply is the amount of a good or service that is available. With this definition, it can be inferred that supply places most of the focus on the producer. Contrary to demand, producers supply more of a good or service as the prices increase and supply less when the prices decrease. These changes can be seen on any standard supply curve. Along the curve found on the supply curve does not move if there is a change in the quantity supplied, which is the x-axis of the supply curve graph. The curve does move to the left or right when there is a non-price determinant influencing the supply in the market. In total, there are 12 total non-price determinants that influence the supply in a market. There are 6 non-price determinants that cause the curve to move to the left, which be a decrease in supply, and 6 that cause the curve to move to the right, which be an increase in supply. The supply curve moves to the right, or increases in supply, when the cost of production decreases, technology improves, sellers expect good things to happen in the future, more sellers enter the market, opportunities in different markets are bad, or favorable natural events occur. The supply curve moves to the left, or decreases in supply, when the cost of production increases, technology becomes outdated, sellers expect bad things in the future, sellers leave the market, opportunities in different markets are good, or unfavorable natural events occur. Now we will go in depth on these 12 non-price determinants to elaborate in detail. There are 6 non-price determinants that can affect the increase in supply of a product. The first one is the cost of production decreases. For example, the cost of gasoline decreases, allowing for more of the goods to be shipped from one place to another. The second one happens when technology improves. For example, the Coke factory getting a new bottling machine, allowing for the Coke factory to bottle more than before. The technology improvements increase production because you can produce more at a faster rate, therefore allowing them to sell more. The third non-price determinant is when more sellers enter the market. This allows for more to be produced at different prices, leading for there to be more supply of a product. An example of this is when Coke opens a new factory in the Indianapolis area, allowing for there to be more supply in Indianapolis. The fourth non-price determinant is when opportunities in other markets are bad. For example, the Pepsi factories are losing consumers, so the factory will turn into a Coke factory to make more of a product. They switch to Coke because there is more of a chance that they will make more of a profit rather than in Pepsi. Producers switch to a different market because there are more opportunities in a different market rather than the one that they are in, and producers want to make the most profit they can. The final non-price determinant is favorable natural events. For example, there is a huge rainstorm and I am a coffee bean grower. The rain will allow for my coffee beans to grow faster and allow me to be able to supply more. Favorable natural events are helpful and allow me for more to be produced and supplied, meaning the producers will make more of a profit. There are 6 non-price determinants that cause the supply of items being produced to decrease. The first factor that decreases production is if the cost of production increases. If it costs more to create a good or service, then producers are less willing to make more supply of an item. Therefore, they will keep the number of items supplied low. An example of most products would be gasoline. If gas prices increase, then the cost of shipping items would increase, leading the producer to not want to ship out as much. Another non-price determinant that decreases supply is when technology becomes outdated. If the technology producers are using is old, then it will not be able to keep up with the job it is needed to complete. If the technology doesn't work, then producing items becomes harder, leading producers to supply less. An example of this happens on a farm. If a farmer's tractor is outdated, then the farmer is less willing to produce more fruits or vegetables since more has to get done by hand. The more effort producers put into an item results in a lower quantity supplied. Another non-price determinant that decreases supply is when sellers leave the market. If the number of people producing decreases, then there is less being produced, resulting in a lower amount. An example of this is when a company decides to close a factory like a Hershey chocolate factory. If there are fewer factories, then there is less chocolate released to the public. Another non-price determinant that decreases supply is when sellers expect bad things to happen in the future. If sellers expect bad things to happen, then they will be afraid to release a high quantity of an item. An example of this is if sellers believe unemployment rates will dramatically rise. If the unemployment rates rise, then the buyers will have less money to buy the items, so the sellers will lose profit. If sellers can predict anything that will affect the number of items purchased, then they will lower the amount offered to the public. Another non-price determinant occurs when opportunities in a different market are good. For example, a Coke factory switches to a Pepsi factory because opportunities are better for Pepsi. Another non-price determinant that decreases supply is unfavorable natural events. If a natural phenomenon ruins any part of how producers make an item or how they distribute an item to buyers, then the amount produced will decrease. An example would be a hurricane. A hurricane destroys nearly everything in its path, therefore a majority of materials and supply vanish. Companies will have to start all over, so there will be a decrease in output until the company can get back to where they were before the disaster. By definition, the elasticity of supply measures how firms will respond to changes in the price of a good or a service. Similar to demand, the labels of elastic, inelastic, and unitary elastic still apply and represent the same values. Supply is elastic and sensitive to changes in price when elasticity is greater than 1. Supply is inelastic and not very responsive to changes in price when elasticity is less than 1. Finally, the supply is unitary elastic when the percentage change in price matches the percentage change in quantity supplied, which means elasticity is exactly 1. The key factor that determines elasticity is time. The elasticity of supply can be over a short time or a longer time. An example of elasticity of supply over a short period of time would be a farmer using pesticide to help his crops successfully grow faster or in larger amounts, but typically does not solve the issue in the long term. An example of elasticity over supply over a longer period of time would occur when a business such as Target builds new stores for larger distribution of supply. Typically, the pattern shows that supply is inelastic in the short run and elastic in the long run. Now we move on to the term equilibrium. The equilibrium is when economic forces, supply and demand, are balanced. It is represented by the equilibrium point on supply and demand curve graph. The equilibrium point is where the demand curve and supply curve for a market intersect. This point is the optimum balance between supply and demand that benefits the market. Surplus occurs when the market is above the equilibrium point, and shortage occurs when the market is below this point. For example, the 2008 financial crisis caused the housing market to experience significant imbalances. Large-scale natural disasters can also cause a disruption in this balance. Thank you.